Pumped to talk about it, guys, because I think this could be a very special season when you look at the talent that Jimbo's been able to put together, when you look at the way the schedule plays out, when you look at the depth on the team, you look at the leadership position at quarterback and on the defensive side, and I see, and again, I don't do this for a living, our next guest does, but I see a lot of first-round potential on this roster, and I'm talking 2021 and beyond. We're joined now by Joe Marino of the Draft Network. Joe, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, and I really appreciate the Rocky intro. That gets me hype, and I grew up on the Rocky movies with my family, so it was a nice little start here.
I saw you bobbing your head when the music started. You're like, heck yeah, I'm ready for this interview. Gets the blood going. So, all right, look, I'm an Aggie. I cover the Aggies. I have a vision of how I think this team's going to play this year and the kind of talent that they have. So I'm just going to throw this out there, and you tell me that I'm crazy, but I feel like there's potentially 5 guys that can get a first-round grade. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be first-rounders, but when I look at Anaya Smith, Jalen Wydermeyer, Isaiah Spiller, Kenyon Green, DeMarvin Leal, I see guys that potentially, when it's all said and done, have first-round grades. Am I crazy?
No, those are definitely the best players or the best prospects in our view as well when we look at this Texas A&M football team. And I don't know that predictively I would think all 5 would go in the first round, but if you put the over-under at 2.5, I think it's an interesting conversation. I think a couple of these guys will be top 32 guys, and probably all 5 of them top 50, top 75 at the latest. There's a lot of talent on this football team. All
right, so let's go through it. Joe Marino, the Draft Network on the BCSI hotline. We'll start off with DeMarvin Leal, who I think most have as the first Aggie taken. Perhaps we'll see how the season plays out. Is he a top 10 kind of guy? Tell me what stands out, why everybody's talking about Marv this year, and they really weren't talking about him last year.
Yeah, we think he's a top 10 caliber prospect at this point in the process. 6'4", 290 pounds, big-time recruit. And what really pops about him is his versatility. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage. You can play him on the edge. You can have him attack interior gaps, and he's extremely powerful. He's long, he's athletic, he's disruptive, and you love his motor. This guy plays with elite effort on every single snap. And so I think the sack production is going to come this year. I think he made a lot of pressure, didn't finish quite as much last year, but I think that's what's going to happen with another year in the system and just another year of growth and development. The guy has unbelievable physical traits. And when you think about the NFL, they really value guys that can fit into a variety of roles. And he's not a scheme-specific player. He'll fit any scheme, and he'll have a lot of appeal at the next level. And this interior defensive line class it's lacking a bit. And Leal is the guy that really pops at the top. If you want to get an answer for the interior for defensive line right now, I feel like you better get DeMarvin Leal early in the draft.
How important are those sack numbers to NFL teams? Is it about the numbers, or is it about the intangibles that he brings?
It's way more about the intangibles. You saw Jason Owe with Penn State last year. He get drafted in the first round, didn't have a sack all season. And so you care so much more about the traits, the length, the first step quickness, the ability to shed blocks, taking good rush angles, having good vision and knowing how to attack the pocket. All of those things really, really matter a whole lot more than the actual sack production. And so right now, from a traits perspective, he's got first-round traits. I think you'd love to see that playmaking ability really show up a little bit more, though, this season.
All right, how about Kenyon Green, another guy on the line, on the offensive line this time, that can play anywhere on the offensive line. We may see him at right tackle. We may see him at left tackle. We may see him at center. I mean, he plays a little bit of all.
Yeah.
Do you see him also as a top 20 potential?
Yeah, I do. 6'4", 325. I'm sure Aggies fans are delighted to know that he was originally committed to LSU. They plucked him over and got a really outstanding starter in the SEC. You mentioned the versatility, not exactly sure what position he's going to play, but the fact that he can play literally all 5, it says a lot about him and his skill set and what he can do. And we talked about versatility with Leal, and it really extends to Kenyon Green just on the offensive line. And so 23-game starter to this point, most of that coming at guard, left and right guard. A lot of thought that he could play tackle this year, which is interesting to me. I like him so much on the interior. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to love him as much at tackle in terms of an NFL draft perspective. I'm sure he'll be fine in terms of being able to hold that job down and be a high-level player. But when you think about him through the NFL lens, we like him best as an interior type player where his power in the run game really shows up. He's got a really stout anchor. He can absorb contact and really maintain the depth of the pocket. And I don't necessarily love his athleticism. And that's why I get a little bit concerned about him at tackle, especially in the NFL. So would like to see him clean up some stuff with his hand usage. Would love to see him be a little bit more nimble on his feet. Maybe that comes from dropping some weight. But if he winds up playing tackle, it's going to be really interesting, because when I watched him over the summer and I watched him play guard, I thought he was a first-round talent. If he goes out to tackle, we'll see. And maybe that's a little bit like Elijah Vera Tucker from last year out of USC, who was really outstanding at guard. He kicks over to tackle, has an okay season, still gets drafted high in the first round. And so that could be a similar parallel to Kenyon Green, but he's a really good football player that I think profiles as a long-term starter at the next level.
Well, let me ask you this about Green, because to me, it speaks a lot about him that if left tackle is the way to the NFL and he can play that, initially there was talk of him being the left tackle. Now there's talk of him being on the right side to help out with the rest of the offensive line. Does it hurt him or help him that he is so willing to play everywhere, even though this is the year where he's going to be mostly graded on?
It's a good question. I think it is helpful, because at the end of the day, if he struggles at tackle, we can still point to the last 2 seasons where he was really good at guard. And so that versatility, knowing they don't have some game reps there, knowing that in a pinch, if you need a guy to kick out to tackle at the next level, that he can do that for you. That's a valuable thing. The more you can do is always better. And I think just kind of clinging to the fact that he has high-level tape on the interior, worst-case scenario, you have a really good guard.
We are talking to Joe Marino of the Draft Network here on Texags Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers on the BCSI hotline. All right, one of the best running backs in all of football, Isaiah Spiller. I know that running backs don't always sneak into that first round because of the durability, and you can put your draft stock elsewhere. First-round talent as well, though, correct?
I like Isaiah Spiller a lot. I think he's in the conversation to be the best running back in this class. 6 foot, 215 pounds, physical runner that we know is going to be a big part of this offense this year. He's been a big part of the offense. And when you think about his foundation of traits, the 3 things that really pop out are vision, right? He knows how to see the field. He knows how to respond, get to daylight. He's got really good power. He's got really good contact balance. And so we're talking about a guy here that averaged nearly 3.5 yards after contact per attempt last year in the SEC. He's a guy that does not go down easily. And that's something that you love about the style and the way that this guy plays. Now, when it comes to things that you wish were part of his game, maybe more of an asset in the passing game is something that really pops to me. He's caught a few passes, but his drop rate is around 17%, which is extremely high. So I'd love to see more consistency and more of an impact on passing downs. And then he's got that fumbling issue that he needs to clean up. But from the perspective of power, vision, contact balance, this guy checks all the boxes in a big way.
All right, another one for you. NFL body, NFL, just everything about him screams to me NFL. Jalen Wydermeyer, the tight end, maybe the top tight end taken in the NFL draft next year. Tell me about his game. Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses?
Yeah, Wydermeyer's definitely in that conversation to be among the first tight ends off the board. 6'5", 265 pounds. He's a power forward in the passing game, right? He's got that massive catch radius. He knows how to extend that catch radius and win in contested situations. He's a mismatch in the middle of the field. I mean, like I said, 6'5", 265. He's going up against safeties that are 6 foot, 200 pounds. He has a massive size advantage on just about anyone that he goes up against, even linebackers that are coming in 6'2", 230 these days. And so he's a tough cover from a physicality perspective, and he's really good in those contested situations. Now, going into the watch, obviously I'd watched a lot of Texas A&M throughout the season last year and in previous seasons. And so Wydermeyer was a name that I was familiar with, but it's always a little different when you sit down and you watch tape from the perspective of scouting and learning about these players and their traits. And one thing that surprised me about Wydermeyer that I didn't see to the degree that I thought I would by going into the tape study this summer was at 265 pounds, I thought he was going to be a more polished blocker. And I think he's a willing blocker, but from a technique perspective, he's not exactly what I would have expected from a 6'5", 265-pound tight end that you profile as this classic throwback inline tight end. And so I'd love to see him hone in on his run blocking technique, and I love to see him develop as a route runner and create a little bit more separation. Right now, he's making a living on these contested catches and just being bigger and stronger than everyone. Well, at the next level, for you to be able to be a productive receiving tight end, you got to get open. And so I want to see a little bit more consistency in that regard, but obviously a really exciting physical package. that I think is primed to take a step forward this year and answer some of those questions.
How about Demani Richardson, a guy to me that checks a lot of boxes as well. He's got the size, the speed. He's a guy that I could certainly see at the next level.
Yeah, 6'1", 210, a safety, physical player, physical tackler. I mean, his ability to get people on the ground is really, really good. And I know that it seems like a basic function of being a safety, but you have got to be a good tackler if you're going to serve as the last line of defense. And you're going to be that guy that plays on the roof and triggers downhill and has to fill, in the run game and run the alley and make tackles outside the numbers. And I love that about him, especially where today's NFL is going, where it's a lot more wide open and it's a space game. You need guys that can tackle or else you're going to be in trouble. Guys are really good at making people miss and creating space for themselves. And when you have a guy like Demani Richardson, who is really good at tackling, that matters a lot. Now, I want to see him make some more plays in the passing game. That's what's going to really define his draft stock, because we know he's willing to play downhill and tackle, and he's physical and aggressive and all those things. But can he create more plays in the passing game, get his hand on a few more footballs, create some more interceptions? I think that's going to be critical for his draft stock as we watch him this year, but he's a really good player.
Joe, how much does program reputation play a role in how teams evaluate talent? Obviously, the smaller schools, if you've got it, you've got it. But if Jimbo is churning on NFL talent, how much does that play in the way NFL teams perceive players?
Well, I think it certainly helps. Like you mentioned, if you can play, you can play. The NFL is going to find you. Small school players have been doing well in the NFL for years. I mean, just go to the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of really good small school players out there, but as you continue to build the pipeline, and we've seen that happen with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, more and more players every year are getting on the radar, and we're really excited about this team. And we have our scouting staff it's really loaded with really talented football minds. We got 6 guys in there, and we look at this Texas A&M team, and we think that it's brimming with talent, and they're right in there in this SEC conversation, depending on how this quarterback situation pans out. We love that they're going to have that running game that they can lean on, but this quarterback is going to be the difference in them really making noise in the SEC, or, probably still having a good year, but falling on the outside looking in when it comes to, the national championship and, playing for the SEC championship.
So I'm looking at a text message just came in about Spiller's fumbles, and I'm looking at last year, 3 fumbles. Is that considered a lot for NFL standards, or is 3? I feel like that's a low number.
Well, it's something where it's the fumbles are there, but it's also the way he holds the football and his style of running. When you're a guy that refuses to go down like Isaiah Spiller, and that ball is going to be exposed, you want to see him definitely take care of it. And so be a little bit more tight with the way he holds the football. So it's not something that I think is going to eliminate him. And we've seen players that had fumbling issues at the college level correct them in the NFL. It's a fixable thing. It's just something that, as a footnote in my notes about Spiller, it's something that I'm looking for him to take a step forward with this year.
So let me just ask you this then. What is considered a fumbling issue? 3 to me doesn't seem like a fumbling issue. You're saying more it's technique that you worry about as opposed to.
You want to see the way a guy holds the football close to his body, never letting it really hang out there. And so when you see even a modest number of fumbles and you're aware of the way that they hold the football, it's something to be mindful of as you're considering, these players. We look at them through every single lens you could possibly think of. And so that's just something that we're looking to see some growth in.
Joe Marino, the Draft Network. Joe, we appreciate your time here, my friend. Thanks so much for calling into the show. We're excited about the season. We'll check in with you here midway through.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.